I'm Nicea DeGering.
And I'm Doug Jessop. Family Heritage Stories exist to give you ideas and examples of stories from the past to help shape the future.
And if those stories aren't passed down from generation to generation, they are lost. And it's as if those people never existed.
In this episode of Family Heritage Stories, we talk to people about their grandma and grandpa.
We also highlight people who are making a difference.
We all benefit from heroes among us. Now, they're going to say, it's just part of the job. But it's more than that. It's time for Hero Salute Stories. People see you on TV and on the media and all that stuff, but you and I met a couple years ago and you did something really, really special. And I just wanted to kind of follow up on this. And we were talking off camera, it's a little longer than I thought, so time kind of flies, but you are a white guy that is a cop, that has a neighbor that is a black guy that needed a kidney. Fill me in on what happened next.
The only way I looked at that is that I had a friend who needed a kidney. We didn't talk about it much. We communicated and I knew what his condition was. I knew that he was going downhill. He was at a point where his kidney function was at about 2%. Ooh. I always used to think that people who were undergoing dialysis, that helped them have a better quality of life. And I don't know that I'd characterize it that way. It just helps keep them alive, and it really isn't much quality of life. But he was in dire need, and I was in a position where we ended up being a perfect match, and none of his family members were, and so we did it.
Wow. And his name?
Ed Cameron.
Hey Ed, good to see you again. So give a shout out. So your wife wears a uniform as well.
She does.
A different kind of uniform, but she is, you're what I call a first responder. Tell me a little bit about your wife.
My wife's been a nurse for 38 years. She has worked at the Veterans Hospital in Salt Lake for that entire time, except for the 4 years that we were away when I was on active duty in the Army. She's worked at a number of different assignments up there, but we lived in American Fork for 28 years, and people would say, why don't you work at the American Fork Hospital that's 5 minutes from your house instead of driving all the way to Salt Lake? And she says, it's because I love the vets. Once she gets connected with them, it's just something about serving those who have served and protected us that she loves doing. When she first hired on in 1983, she would occasionally see a World War I vet.
Whoa.
Of course, we don't see those anymore.
No.
But it's a reverent experience when you see somebody who has served, especially those who have encountered circumstances that were very difficult and maybe even life-threatening for them, to recognize that they were willing to do that. So she loves the vets, and that's why she stays there.
You obviously see a lot of stuff, and I'll be the first to say I couldn't do your job.
I don't think I could do yours either.
Well, yeah, so I see a lot of the stuff that you do, because now granted, we're, I'm the media guy and you're the person that talks to the media, but, and you talk about all the various accidents or this and that and et cetera. How do you do it? I mean, how do you see some really bad stuff?
Well, we do, and people deal with it differently. For me, the way I deal with it, I try to look at it as something that somebody needs help with, whether it's, we talked about domestic violence, or whether it's somebody who's experienced an overdose, or somebody who's lost, or somebody who has fallen off a cliff, or somebody who has been in a crash, or somebody who has passed away.
Right.
But we all do need a break from those things. If you just fill your life with those things day after day and you don't do something to decompress, then it can be problematic. And for me, my home is my sanctuary, and and my family. I love the people I work with. and I consider them some of my best friends, but I don't socialize with them outside of work very often, if ever. And it's not because I don't like them, but for me, I like getting together with my barber son and finding out how the cutting hair business is going, or my pilot son and finding out how the flying business is going, or my dispatcher daughter and finding out how the 911 dispatching business is going, or my caretaker daughter or my student daughter, and finding what's going on in your world and showing an interest in them. And it kind of helps me forget something awful that I might have seen. And I think I've gotten pretty good at that. But sometimes I have to do it consciously, or else I dwell on it too much and it starts to hurt.
How long have you been doing this now?
Over 30 years now.
Really? Wow. Without sounding strange, why do you? I mean, what makes Spencer Cannon wake up each morning and say, it's time to get the uniform on and go out there?
I want to help somebody who needs help. Sometimes the help that we provide is not welcome, but it's still needed help. Sometimes the help that we provide is provided to people who don't want to be in that circumstance, some kind of a tragedy, but I want to be there to help people who need it.
Hero Salute stories are made possible by the generous support of viewers like you. Go to fedorafoundation.org to donate today.
So the first time I was interviewed by Doug, several years ago, back one of his first interviewees with Jessop's Journals, I did not know Doug, but immediately he put me at ease. Immediately we just started to talk, and he put me, it was just a very simple experience. Today, now, when we do these interviews together, we're just two friends talking, and it's a great experience. Like we were just sitting at a restaurant table, just talking over a plate of food together.
Did you know that you could get help saving your family heritage stories with a private interview with me or Doug?
Contact Krista at fedorafoundation.org to schedule your interview.
There's a special bond between grandparents and grandkids.
Tell me a story about your grandma or grandpa. This is Doug Jessop. One of my favorite questions to ask people all around the world is, tell me a story about your grandma or grandpa. Well, today I'm going to try to explain why I asked that question. When I was 12 years old, I got a cassette recorder for Christmas. I liked to interview people even back then. My favorite person to interview was my Gramps. Now, he was a pretty cool guy. His name was George Emo Youngquist. He told me stories that my mother didn't even know. Gramps died when I was 19 years old. The last words that my grandfather said on this earth were, "Please remember me." This is his story. Gramps, George Emo Youngquist, was a first-generation American. His parents were Frederick and Ida. They immigrated in 1903. George was born that same year at a place called Oak Park, Illinois, which is basically just outside of Chicago. When George was 8 years old, his mother died of a birth defects because they couldn't afford a doctor. 4 years later, Frederick, his father, visa expired, and he had to return to his home country. Frederick wanted his little boy, his only child, to be able to have the advantages of living right here in the United States, even though he knew he would never see his child again. They communicated with letters and such, but never saw him again. So here's my Gramps. He's 12 years old, and he's put on a train by himself from Chicago, Illinois to Pasadena, California. He's going to go live with his mother's eldest sister. She's a 45-year-old single woman, and she was known as Auntie Augusta. Auntie Augusta had never had any children, raised him as her own. George had a good childhood living with Auntie. You know, he helped in the garden, had a newspaper route as a kid. The fun thing was, and this is one of those things that my mother didn't know, he was a sharp dresser, and he was actually a chauffeur during the Depression. He got to drive around those Hollywood types. In the mid-1930s, George met a beautiful young lady. Now, I'm ever so slightly biased, but okay. She was a beautiful nursing student, and she was from Iowa, and they met at a dance at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. Her name was Florence Holm. Now, she was quite a looker, and she had lots of suitors, but then she got sick. She had polio. And you know what? All the suitors disappeared, except for one, George. They got married in 1936. George was a furniture maker, owned an upholstery shop in Pasadena, and Florence was a pediatric emergency room nurse. They were blessed with 2 cute little girls, the oldest of which is my mom. Sadly, Florence died at the age of 44 of breast cancer. My mom was 14 years old. So here's George. He had lost his mom, was raised by a single dad for a number of years. Then his dad had to go back to the old country. Then he's raised by a single mom, his auntie. And now he's a single dad of 2 young girls. He never remarried. I was born 6 years later. Gramps was the kindest, most gentle man I ever met. We would rub noses. He'd call them Eskimo kisses. I have fond memories of him rubbing his 5 o'clock shadow on me. Man, I knew I was loved. Gramps always had a camera in his hand. The old movies you see at the beginning of every episode of Family Heritage Stories, well, those are actually his old 8mm movies. I follow in his footsteps, telling stories with pictures. When Gramps passed away, I inherited his cufflinks. Right here, see that? This custom hat, it's called the George. Those are his cufflinks. Every time I wear this hat, I remember my Gramps. So Gramps, when you said, please remember me, you are the reason. You are the reason for my passion to help people tell their stories. Because to me, if stories are not passed down from generation to generation, they're lost. And those people are forgotten. Gramps, you will never be forgotten.
Hi, this is Eric James. You're watching Family Heritage Stories, and we'll be right back.
Swedish fish are a unique fish-shaped candy. You know what else is unique and fish-shaped? Say, it's Sweden. Obviously.
Swedish fish. They're Swedish-ish.
John Taylor. So, do you know how to make holy water? You boil the hell out of it. You want to know how to catch a polar bear? Okay, you get up, you cut a hole in the ice, and then you spread peas around it. And so when the bear comes to take a pee, you kick him in the ice hole.
A little later in the show, we find out the story behind one of the treasures remembered here at Anthony's Fine Art and Antiques.
Green Giant, naturally sweet. Utan tillsatt salt eller socker, bara krispig god majs.
Green Giant.
I was a technical sergeant, E6.
I served in Vietnam in 1969.
I was a sergeant in the United States Army, paratrooper.
I am an U.S. Army veteran.
I was in the Marine Corps, 2000-2004.
I served in the Army National Guard for almost 17 years.
I served in the United States Air Force for 4 years. This is my crew that I used to load bombs with.
I was a baby in this one. My first deployment in a Humvee and dirty and dusty.
This was related to my daughter, Brenna. It was her birthday. I was in Afghanistan, and I had my friend take this at the chow hall.
I truly almost don't recognize that person. It was the most meaningful period of my life.
It's just because it's hard being out. It's like still probably the best time of our lives, you know? You can't get that anywhere else.
Have I ever asked for help myself?
It's always tough, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't say that I have. I mean, I always feel like I can solve my own problems, but eventually, you know, you just can't deal with it on your own.
I guess it's a part of the military too, right? Service before self.
It was drilled in, service before self.
There's something about the camaraderie of some of the people I know from Vietnam. There is something deeper, I think.
Most of us, we're not gonna admit that we need to help.
If you don't have someone to kind of help you guide those thoughts, it can be really bad.
And you start to question, maybe people would be better off without me, you know? When you realize that you're not alone, once you take that first step, there's so much support.
We just have to take the action to go and get it.
Hello, my name's Cruise Director Aaron Mack, and you are watching Family Heritage Stories, and we'll be right back.
Doug, exciting, come aboard, we're expecting you. The Love Boat promises something for everyone. Set a course for adventure, your mind on a new romance. It's life, welcome aboard, it's life.
You learn a lot about traditions, values, and culture when you travel.
It's time for vacation locations.
In Sweden, luminous summer days and serene winters weave our story. We think differently. Our progressive approach and our caring relationship with nature have shaped our identity. And yes, for us, fika is both a sixth sense and a seventh heaven. Sweden boasts a canvas of contrasts. With nature always just around the corner, whether it's the tranquil countryside or the vibrant city center, all framed by majestic mountains and an expansive archipelago. Our right of public access opens endless possibilities for memorable experiences. Paddle on mirror-like lakes, bike or hike through lush forests or cross snowy fields. Sweden is an adventure playground offering accessible delights for every traveler. Whatever type of holiday you dream of, you'll find the perfect place to stay. From sleek modern hotels to the intimate charm of countryside manors, lakeside cabins, and even nights under the stars. Our cuisine is a testament to our heritage and innovation. We're a mix of fresh produce and foraged treasures come together to give you the authentic taste of Sweden. From the wilds of our landscapes to the heartbeats of our cities, from cherished customs to new ideas, we invite you into our ever-unfolding story. Welcome to Sweden, a destination of a different nature.
Objects with stories are treasures remembered. It's time now for a visit with Dr. Micah Christensen.
I am with Dr. Micah Christensen at Anthony's Fine Art today. So Micah, number one, thanks for letting us come on today. Now, I have to admit, I went to college at Utah State University, and the valley is called Cache Valley.
That's right.
You know, where they had the cache of trappers and everything.
That's right.
And this kind of looks reminiscent.
This is set in the Cache Valley. The man on the horseback is Captain Bonneville, who helped establish the fur trading that happened up in Cache Valley in the mid-19th century.
Now, there's a lot of things named Bonneville in Utah.
That's right.
And I'm guessing a lot of people don't know why.
This is the corpus delicti, the actual person named Bonneville. He was born in France as a young graduating officer from the U.S. Military Academy. The most attractive things to do with your time are to explore.
Sure.
And he was sent back west as part of a military expedition and a peaceful military expedition, and as part of a commercial effort by John Jacob Astor to explore and map the Oregon Trail. In fact, the Mormon pioneers were dependent on the maps created by Captain Bonneville to make their way from the East Coast to the West.
Who is the person that made this beauty?
Minerva Teichert has become a household name regionally, but I think she's on the precipice of becoming a nationally known figure. She was born in Ogden, Utah, but she trained at the Art Institute of Chicago and then the Art Students League of New York. She is one of the most highly trained and accomplished artists of her generation and was recognized by people like Robert Henry, who was her professor in New York, as being one of his greatest talents. But unlike many artists who stayed in New York on either coast, he told her to go paint the story of her people. And being from the Intermountain West, she comes back to Utah, Wyoming, Idaho. She ends up settling in Cokeville, Wyoming, and she looks for books and materials on the history of the local area and finds a book on Captain Bonneville and begins making these monumental canvases. This is one of two that she did depicting Captain Bonneville.
I'm certainly not perfect. And sometimes you give the impression that everything was wonderful in your life. That isn't the case. But what it is you can focus on the negative or you can focus on the positive. And I think the stories that we pass down can be positive stories that can lift people throughout their lives, hopefully. I'd be happy to recommend this to other people. I think that sharing stories of yourself, the reality of who you are, and having people being able to remember you is a big deal. And we all have different stories. And most of them are really pretty interesting.
Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other.
If you want help saving your family heritage stories with a private interview, contact Krista at fedorafoundation.org for pricing and availability.
Everyone has a story.
Sometimes those stories are told through music.
Hey, I'm Eric James. I'm excited to show you my new music video for the song Change. And I know each and every one of us experiences change in our lives. I wrote this at a time period where I really needed change in my life. Here's Change.
I've hit the ground. Don't wanna feel this way. I see a distant stage. I'm in the crowd. Will that be me someday? I've tried feeling joy inside when everything around me is in flames. Am I to blame? Time has made things harder, but I'm learning to grow stronger. Can I change? How can I change? Wait until I'm numb. I want me back. Can this pain be undone? Held up by the past. If I let go, I wonder what will last. I've tried feeling joy inside when everything around me is in flames. Am I to blame? Time has made things harder, but I'm learning to grow stronger. Can I change? How can I change? How can I change? I'm on the ground, but I won't stay this way.
A 988 is the number that can make a difference.
It's a number to use when you need help.
Call, text, or chat 988 day or night.
The National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
Because you never know when you or someone you know may need it.
988. Learn it, know it, share it.
What makes you smile? Spry Natural Xylitol mints make me smile. I think it might help you too.
It's our honor to be able to help people remember where they came from.
The Fedora Foundation supports the collection, preservation, and distribution of diverse stories of traditions, values, and culture, right here on TV and online as well at familyheritagestories.org.
How do you want to be remembered? With another episode of Family Heritage Stories, I'm Nicea DeGering.
And I'm Doug Jessop.
Hit the ground.